In this video, we're going to look at how to drive our character around once we have a good walk cycle made with cat motion. So if we go over to our motion tab here, you can see we have our cat motion, and we're fairly happy with the resulting tuned parametric walk cycle we have. So let's just go into cat motion, and in the global section we'll see we have a couple of different walk modes. Right now we're using walk on spot, which means that the character just kind of sits there and does its floating walk cycle. We also have walk on a line, which will allow us to see the character and its forward progression and how that works, which is really nice to have for previewing as well. For driving the character around, we want to choose a path node, and that way we can interactively animate where this character is going to go. So any object can be a path node. Standardly you would go and just pick a helper, maybe something like a dummy or a point helper. So I'll grab a point helper and just pop it in the scene. And then up here in cat motion we're going to say pick path node. So we're going to select on that one, and you see that the character automatically moves to that position. We'll have to rotate this path node so that the character is facing up and in the direction that we want. Okay, so now that we have this path node, we can kind of close this out and animate this path node around. So wherever this kind of goes, the character will follow. Just turn on auto key, and animate this along. You can see that we get a couple of things here. The character follows along with that path node, and we get these little footsteps that get created. So that is from this section here. If we just go back into cat motion, you'll see when we go into limb phases we have footprints and the way that they get created. We can create them or delete them or reset them. So as these footprints just kind of automatically get created with your path node, you can also interactively edit them in any way that you want. So were this guy to need to step up right here, you can just grab this in the viewport, move it up, maybe grab this one and move it up a little bit, so kind of like a little step up and then step down type of thing, and easily edit those. You can also rotate those placements so that the foot comes and it will try and kind of step into that. The other really great thing is you can actually animate these, which is pretty cool. So if we take these, set those back, and set them all forward here. So you can create sliding scenarios and things like that for your character, which is pretty cool. So I'm just going to remove all this animation off of these guys here and actually go in back to cat motion and just reset these. So I'll go into cat motion, go into limbs phases, and say reset footsteps, so that the things that I've done to the animation as well as the ground there are kind of reset, and the character just kind of walks forward here. So as we get over here, move this over here and we'll rotate it slightly, so you can see that the character not only follows the position but the orientation of that path node. So you can adjust the orientation of your character as it walks around to go around corners and things like that. Now the nice part about this is just a standard max object, so things you want to do like add controllers or constraints or anything like that you can do with this path node. So a standard thing to do would be just to create a simple path for this character to walk along. So we'll do that in the top view. Then we'll just take that path node and remove its animation, and then go to animation, constraints, and add a path constraint. So now we can pick this path, and the path node will follow the path, the character will follow that path node, and create the footsteps along it. Now you can see this guy kind of shimmying along here as he cruises around, which may or may not be what your desired result is. What we can do is, for our point helper, just go in and under the path constraint ask it to follow along that path and just reorient it so that it's going in the correct direction at the start. So now that follows the path and the character follows along with that, which is pretty cool. So there's one more thing about adding footsteps and kind of the ease of use and basics of creating these footsteps. We saw we can move them, we can animate them, we can also ask them to kind of be constrained to a surface, or not necessarily constrained, but collide with the surface and then reposition themselves accordingly. So to do that, I'm just going to create a surface here. We'll go ahead and make a basic plane and give it a few segments to work with. Then I'm going to go ahead and place a noise modifier on it. We'll set this to maybe more at 50 and increase the scale a bit. So now we have this kind of wavy plane that the character is on here, but the footsteps are not quite set to. So in order to get our character to walk over this plane, you can see the way that the character walks is just through it, is to go back into cat motion and pick the plane through the footsteps area. So we'll select the character, go to motion, go back into cat motion, and the same place where we reset the footsteps under limb phases, you can see that there is a pick ground node. So we can click on pick ground, and what it'll do is reset all those footsteps to match the surface of the ground that you picked. So this is a really nice and quick and effective feature for this character to use. And now you see when we play this back, kind of walks up and down and follows the surface of the ground. Okay. Now the nice thing about all of this is things like the path node you can control with a path or with a noise controller, or add anything that you want, list controllers, all the rest of it onto it, as well as we haven't completely been constrained to this plane or anything like that. So things like if I need to go and adjust this particular footstep for some reason, then I can. So I'll grab this footstep and decide that it should arc out a little bit more, and you can see that that's the way that that foot goes. Or I can rotate it up a little bit, and that's how that will work. And the same with this. If I decide that at some point there is something else that's on this surface and I need to move it up, then I can do that. So it's not really locking me into only being on this surface. It's giving me the global ability to adjust where the character walks, and then the ability to fine-tune that animation after that, which is really great. So that's the basics of working with cat motion and driving your character around once you have a procedural walk cycle.